You guys know that anytime you get to open up the scriptures, it's a privilege and an honor. I think we have, if you're in full-time ministry, we have the best stinking job in the entire world. Would you guys admit it? Right? Because we would do this for free. So the fact that we get to do this for our vocation, I guess it's even on hard days. Like hard days in ministry are still good days because you're in ministry. Is how I feel about it. But to be able to open up scripture and teach in front of pastors is just straight up scary. I just want to say that, right? It's very intimidating because I'm going to say something wrong about something. So I would like to ask for your grace is what I would like to ask for. How many guys collected football cards growing up? Anybody collect football cards, baseball cards, anything like that? Okay. Pogs. I don't know. I'm just there you go. That's your generation, right? I remember when I was a middle school youth pastor. I think you're old enough to have been in my middle school youth ministry, actually. Pogs were really, I never understood Pogs, dude. I got to be honest. I never understood that. Beyblades? Now that's cool. Anybody collect Beyblade girl in the back? All right. Who does not know what a Beyblade is? All right. There's Beyblade tournaments. It's a big deal. Anybody collect Pokemon cards? All right, there we go. I just want to make sure I got everybody. In the 70s, I collected football cards, and our church secretary's son turned 13 and felt he was too mature for football cards and asked me if I wanted all of them. Side note, just kind of a cool piece of trivia, his name is Michael Gray, and today he's the curator of the Country Music Hall of Fame in Nashville. But when he was 13, he was too cool for football cards, and he gave me a grocery bag. Anybody remember paper bags? He gave me a grocery bag full of football cards. It was awesome. I spent a year or two just sorting them, man. It was into different teams, then different years. I had back in the 70s, you were either a Pittsburgh Steelers fan or you didn't love Jesus and you rooted for the Cowboys. Like, God, there's a hole in that roof so God can make sure they don't get too out of hand because he knows how much sin they got. But, I'm sorry. All he needs is the Holy Spirit, but he ain't welcome there either. I'm sorry. I'm speaking truth no, I'm just sorry. You guys this is blasphemy. You're not blaspheming Jesus, but it still feels like it to me. But sorry about that. But in any case, we moved to Florida when I was going into fourth grade from Detroit, and I was too little to unpack the U-Haul, so I was waiting on all my toys to come out of the truck. If you've ever moved when you were a kid, that's what you do, man. You play in the yard, see if the neighborhood has any kids your age, and then you keep coming back to see if your toys are set up. And at the end of the day, I couldn't find my football cards. The truck was empty, so I was like, they're somewhere. So I went to my mom and I said, Mom, do you know where my football cards are? She said, yes. Do you remember the garage sale we had back in Detroit? I know. So I was like, yes, ma'am. And she said, I sold them. And I said, how much? She said, $5. And that's why I still don't talk to her. Jesus can forgive a whole lot of sin. I don't know if he can forgive that. Right? Oh my gosh. I had every single player for the Steelers and for the Cowboys. I do remember I had a Terry Bradshaw rookie, and I had a Roger Staubach rookie. I had a Dante Stallworth rookie, and that's all I remember on the rookie cards. I had a couple of guys from the 60s. My dad was like, oh, you need to hang on to that one, but he should have told his wife. So I have a Mark McGuire rookie card on me right now. Any guesses as to how much it's worth? Actually, really close. It's worth like $210 is what it's worth. $210, which is crazy. Because what is a football card? It's cardboard and ink. Like what it is isn't much. Like my mom, from her perspective, not being a little boy who idolizes, right, all the football stars, she got $5 for a bag of cardboard in the 70s. She thought the other guy was getting taken to the cleaners, right? Because she thought they were worth what they brought to the table. But we all know their value doesn't come from what they bring to the table. Their value comes from what somebody else would put on the table to make them theirs. Does that make sense? Why is this one worth $211? And I don't know. Greg Gagne. You know Greg Gagne? Yeah, okay. He went to our church in Orlando. That's how I got to be the bat boy. Tinkerfield in Orlando. So it's a preseason game. So I only got to do it for one game. You really oversold me yesterday as saying he was a bat boy for one game. I also rolled all of the balls to the umpire because they said don't get on the grass, and I got laughed at by 14,000 people. It's my most embarrassing day of my life. So I actually don't even try to bring it up. Thank you. I love when you're preaching and feel shame at the same time. But the reason why this is worth $200 and Greg Gagney's is not is because of the stats that accumulated on the back of their baseball card. Does that make sense? And all of us we're like football cards, and we read each other's stats. And there are people in this room that you want to know better because of the stats on their card and what they can do for you, your ministry, your career, the opportunities that getting to know them or being referred by them would bring to you. There's other people. Well, hopefully we wouldn't be mean to anybody, but there's other people we walk by around here all the time, and we didn't ask for their name, and we didn't ask for their email or get coffee, and it's because of their stats. They don't like we build relationships like baseball managers build their rosters, right? And we can look at certain people and we deem them less worthy. Just hang on. I don't think anybody's a mean person. I'm not saying that. But we see people as worth our time and not worth our time. And it's based on the stats. I think some of us, this idea of assigning value to people affects us. If you had a very traumatic childhood, you feel like your baseball card was dented very early in your life, and you feel like that's negatively impacted your value. And that on a case, you look fine. But if anybody gets to hold your card and get up close, they're going to find out how damaged you are. And they're going to see you for the way you see you. Or we were raised by an alcoholic parent. We've been through a divorce that nobody here knows about because it's before we came to faith, or we've got another kid that I'm just saying, everybody in this room has done things that you would die if anybody else in this room ever knew. And this affects the way we think of our value. And it's this idea of value and the way that we assign value that is addressed in an entire chapter of the Bible. It's my favorite chapter. My second favorite would be Matthew 25, particularly the parable of the talents. But my first favorite would be actually Luke 15. So if you've got a Bible, why don't you go to Luke chapter 15. And the coolest thing about speaking to preachers is I can speak shorthand. You know what I mean? In our congregation, over half of our church, their only religious experience, the context for religion is the Catholic Church, which doesn't always read out of the Bible. They do more homilies than they do scripture. If you're Catholic, you know that. But so I have to take a lot more time. So apparently the time I was going to save, I just burned right there. So anyway, Luke 15:1. Now the tax collectors and sinners were all drawing near to hear him, and the Pharisees and the scribes grumbled, saying, "This man receives sinners and eats with them." It's one of the things I love most about Jesus, that the people farthest from God felt most loved God when he showed up in the human story. I love that. The people farthest from God felt most loved by him. And right off the bat, I'm thinking of the people that I would say are most distant from God. And my question, I don't think, for you, if you're doing the same thing, like all of us do that, who are the notorious sinners in your sphere of influence? On your street, in your kid's elementary school, the other parents that you see at Little League, like you're just like, that dude, he's got scumbag vibes all day, right? Or you've got people that you know that, I'll just tell you where I'm going. I think our friendship circles are too clean. That's all I'm saying. We don't hang out with the people Jesus hung out with because we're afraid of what church people are going to think. Or worse, we're afraid of other pastors are going to think. My wife and I were invited early on when we moved into Stoughton. So I think one of the biggest advantages I had as a church planner in Boston is that I was Sean the professor for 4 years before I was ever Sean the pastor. So Sean the professor I was a student ministry professor. But the way I pitch that is, I'm an adolescent spiritual. What do you teach? I teach adolescent spiritual development. And they're like, ooh, that sounds good. Tell me more. Right? So that was, sounds good though, didn't it? Made me sound smart. So Sean, the professor, gets invited. I've been to 5 bar mitzvahs. I don't know how many other SBC church planners have been to bar mitzvah on purpose. But I've been invited to multiple, and that's a huge honor. I've been to a Jewish funeral and Catholic funerals, and that's awesome. We're at a party. It's a Super Bowl party being hosted by a Jewish guy, Werman, and a mutual. Well, all 3 of our boys were on the same baseball team, and the Catholic is the head coach, and very well loved in our tiny town. Everybody loves Jack. If you don't like Jack, you're the jerk. That's the kind of guy he is. We all know people like that. People like Tony. If you don't like Tony Merida, you're the jerk. He's just the nicest guy in the world. And none of us like Nate. But I'm just kidding. Easy to pick on, sorry. In any case, we're at this Super Bowl party, and I look around and I go, we're a joke, right? And they go, what? I was like, so a Jew, a Catholic, and a Baptist are all at a Super Bowl party. And they thought that was hilarious. But over the course of the night, they just, man, is this going to be online? Because I don't want them to, I don't want to hurt them. This is years ago. But all the adults at the party ended up getting tipsy. And it was the first time. I'm a preacher's kid. My wife's a preacher's kid. We both went to Christian schools our whole life. We went to Christian college. Whatever. I mentioned that yesterday. I've been in the bubble my whole life. And I always loved lost people as a concept, but had never really spent a lot of time with people who didn't share my faith. And this is the first time this is all happening. And I was told that people who are far from God, they think they're happy, but they're not really happy. They think they have a good marriage, but they don't really have a good marriage because they're not Christians. But I found out that's actually not true. I think their marriage would have been better with their faith. But I've known some amazing people, and these are 2 of them. And there were other people at the party also. And when everybody was tipsy, the game's over. We get in the car, and my wife and I look at each other, and we're a little bit uncomfortable. Like the whole scene, it's like I felt like if my parents were there, I would have gotten in trouble, right? Because they're like, why would you be at a party like that? And I asked my wife, I said, do you think we stayed too long? And I was like, I maybe, but like when? I don't know. So it started a conversation. The kids are in the back seat, and so I said, Garrett, I said, how, and I mentioned a couple of dads, how they were acting silly? Yeah, why were they acting silly? Because they drank too much beer. And I said, right. I said, but did you see, was I acting silly like that? No. But Mom was. No, I'm just kidding. She's not an alcoholic. She's a drug addict. But you guys don't know me. I probably shouldn't say any of this stuff. Believe it or not, this is actually how I preach. It's just, in any case, if you knew her though, you would know it's true. But we were, so we're hanging out, and I said, babe, the fact that we're having this conversation though, means we were at the right party. Right? You guys are like, I'm not convinced. Yeah, Jesus was called a drunkard and a glutton. Was Jesus ever drunk? Yes or no? Why was he called that? Because where he was at, who he was with. He didn't let other people's sin intimidate him. You know what I mean? Like his relationship with the Father was not threatened by somebody else not having a relationship with the Father. Like he knew they need this more than anybody. And they'll never get it if they don't have access to it. Now, we came up with a rule that I think is better for us moving forward because we just never been in that situation before. And we were just honored. We know that we're devoted followers of Jesus. I'm not sure that anybody at this party is. I'm not saying nobody is. I'm just saying we don't know that anybody is. And if we don't nurture this relationship, our friendship becomes a bridge by which they walk across to faith in Jesus. And so the rule, if it helps you or whatever, if this would be beneficial to you at all, is when there's no more redeemable conversation possible, like when there's nobody, like we just move from sober person to sober person until there's no more redeemable opportunity, and then they don't even know that we've left anyway at that point, right? So that's kind of how, that's where we settled on. And that might make some of you guys uncomfortable, and I'm okay with that because that puts me in really good company. Their problem with Jesus, one was that he associated with them, but two, you just eat with them. Like if you're going to tell them they need to repent and go make sacrifices to the high priest according to the Torah so that they can be ceremonially clean, to be accepted into the temple, that'd be one thing. You didn't even give them a gospel tract, Jesus. Like you're just watching a football game with them? Like they're pagans, dude. So Jesus tells them this story. That's why he tells these stories. These three parables are to correct a misunderstanding of the character and nature of the mission of Jesus. That's why they were given. And as a pastor, I tell church planters, I think the most dangerous thing that can happen to you as a church planter is that your church gets to 100 people. Because now you have enough Christians in the church to keep you distracted from the mission of your church. You can spend 40 hours a week taking care of the already found and never smell like a pagan. They smelled lost people on Jesus. And that was offensive. Like it bothered them. Like you act like you just like them. Like you would prefer their company over mine. And for them for sure, right? But they were missing the point. So these three stories, and I'm not going to read all three of them. It's a long chapter. My pastor growing up spent a year in Luke 15. And that's when I almost became Catholic. But the pastor was my dad, so I wasn't allowed. So he told them this parable, verse 3. What man of you having 100 sheep, if he loses one, doesn't leave the 99 in the open country and go after the one that is lost until he finds it? It's an agrarian culture. He uses an agrarian allegory, metaphor. I hated English lit. But it was an example that fit their culture, that they understood, because the answer to the question is, yeah, we all would. Because if you're a business owner and you notice that you lose 1% of your revenue in one day, anytime you find leakage, if you own rentals, if you find leakage, you have to plug that. Because if you lose 1% of your income a day and that continues, you can only stay in business for 100 days. So it's a rhetorical question. Who would go look for that sheep? All of us would go look for that sheep. This is my livelihood, all right? And when he finds it, he lays it on his shoulders, rejoicing. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and his neighbors, saying to them, "Rejoice with me, for I found my sheep that was lost." So this isn't a sheep that's like behind his wagon or behind that bush over there. Like you don't throw a party because it was lost for 15 minutes and you were late for dinner. If you're throwing a party, man, this thing is like lost. Like other people would have given up on this sheep, right? Like that's the only thing that makes the story make sense. So in their context, when Jesus is saying is what scenario would you throw a party over? He didn't have to go into all the details of the story because they know under what circumstances they would throw a party for just finding a sheep. And so far, though, he hasn't offended anybody. Everybody is on board with him and what he's saying so far. But it gets offensive in verse 7. Just like this, just so. I tell you, there is more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who need no repentance. And that's where it was offensive. Because for context, it would be like if there was somebody who was an employee of the school in charge of catering and they were coming in and out, but then they stayed in this room to hear what I was talking about because of the funny story about the football card. And we're going to get to the gospel. And they're standing in the room God is quantifiably, measurably happier that that person is here than the rest of you combined. And he said, God is happier that I'm having lunch with just one of these guys than all the rest of you guys combined. And he tells another story that seems to have the exact same point. Why would he do that? I think there's a couple of reasons. I think one, maybe the gravity of what he was saying hadn't settled in. So I'm going to hang on. It's like this. My wife says I over-explain, and I go, so did Jesus. So, right? Like you explain something, and you look at, like you've done this as a teacher, where you feel like, I don't know if they get it. So you go, well, what I mean is, and you just tell another story that goes to the same point, and Jesus seems to be doing that. So he says, all right, I can tell some of you guys aren't, I don't know if you're like offended enough. I don't know that Jesus was a provocateur as much as I don't think you guys are getting this. And so he tells another story, and that's in verse 8. He says, or what woman having 10 silver coins, if she loses one, does not light a lamp and sweep the house and seek diligently until she finds it? From what I understand, and I can say this in my church with confidence because I am the only theologian in my church, right? So you all have bigger degrees than me, so I got to be careful. But from what I understand, this is a headband that had 10 coins on it that a married woman would wear. So for her to lose one of these coins would be like my wife losing the stone out of her wedding ring. Not the exact same thing, but very similar in idea. And when we left, we got married in college and took our first ministry job. Moving in, we did lose her wedding ring, and it was only 2 years old at the time. And we panicked, and for, over a week, we went back through everything that we had set up, trying to find everything. And then when we moved 4 years later, my wife goes, let's look for the ring again when we move. So it was an excruciating thing to go through everything. We never did find the ring. We were straining paint through pantyhose, looking for paint. Like that's how much we were looking for this. So the idea that this woman would not stop looking until she finds it, that makes sense to me because it's what we did. But she should have taken better care of the headband, right? Of that head. Like all of these are connected by strings and like, why didn't you notice it when it fell off when it first fell off? And why do you have to sweep a house to find a coin? Like, how filthy is your house? Like, the dirtiest place, we have hardwood floors, and the dirtiest place is under the couch, and there are softball-sized tumbleweeds of fuzz. And the skirt has only a half-inch gap, so I don't know how, right? That's amazing. That's proof there's a God right there. There you go. But if I lifted up the couch, I go, oh, there's a quarter. The story doesn't make sense unless she has what kind of floor? Anyone? Straw, possibly? Dirt is what I was thinking. And then if she doesn't know when she's lost it, did she step on it and push it down into the earth, or her husband, or one of her kids? Is this a 16th of an inch, under the 1/8 of an inch? Fractions. Yeah, 5, 6, or whatever. I'm lost at that point. But anyway, I know that one's doesn't matter. Now I have ADD. You already know that. And I should be taking my wife's drugs. But she looks until she finds it, but it's the same outcome. There's joy in heaven over one than over the other 9. And then there's the throat punch story. And that's the story of the son. And again, I get to preach to pastors, so we know the parable of the prodigal son. There's a few things I want to point out that you might not be as familiar with, but according to the Torah, the oldest brother gets twice the inheritance, twice the portion as all the other brothers. So if there's 2 brothers, then when the younger son asked for his inheritance, he was asking for 1/3 of his father's estate. Now, first of all, no Jewish kid would ever do that. Because what he was also saying is, I wish you were dead and give me your stuff now. I'm not Jewish, but if I did that, I would die. I'm 55. And if I did that to my dad, there would be, I can't imagine doing this. I'm saying he's a good and godly man, but if he wasn't, Who says, I wish you were dead and I want you to give me everything? Like there's nobody. Like, so this is the first story Jesus is told that before he's gone into the story too far, nobody's with him. The other two, they're with him, and then they gotcha at the end. But with this story, they're like, this is dumb. I mean, he's also violating the 5th commandment, don't dishonor your father and mother. And if anybody else finds out about this, by the way, everybody finds out about it. The son references like the notoriety of his brother's sin, that the other people in the city could have made an accusation against the son. The son would be brought before the elders at the city gate and condemned, and then he'd be stoned to death with rocks, and they would make the dad throw the first rock. So the punishment for this is death. So that's another reason why this would never happen in a conservative Jewish culture. And Jesus is talking to religious people. None of their boys would do this. Like, this is a dumb, okay, I've heard you teach a lot, but this is the dumbest illustration I think you've ever manufactured. What's crazy is that the dad actually liquidates 1/3 of his estate, and he actually gives it to this moron. Like, every part of this story gets more offensive. And it's supposed to. He goes to a far country, and he wastes his money, the brother tells us later, on parties and prostitutes. Then he takes a job feeding pigs. I don't think that's an accidental detail in the story because pigs are unclean animals. Like, Jesus is indicating this guy's not only walked away from his family, he's walked away from his faith. He's walked away from everything on purpose. And God has degraded this man. And no doubt everybody's going, justice is served. Now all is right in the world. The dad was wrong, but God leveled out. He cleared the books, whatever, at the end of the story. And he's eating it, and he says, even servants, even immigrant workers on my dad's farm have it better than this. I'm no longer worthy to be called his son. And he goes into a speech. This one must say, I'm no longer worthy. I've sinned against heaven and against you. He's got a whole speech. And he goes back, and the dad's been waiting on the son the whole time. He sees him afar off. I don't know why that's as much of a detail in the story, except that I can tell my kids by their gait, G-A-I-T, their strut, right? Like Garrett is like, he's intense like I am. We lean forward. Ryan is 6'4". He's lanky, and he's an introvert, so he's not walking into every room like this, right? And so, like, if you were to only show me like silhouettes, like if the sun was on the other side of the door and one of my boys walked in, I could tell you which kid it is. You put your kids in the doorway, but put my kid in the doorway, I'm gonna recognize my kid. So he recognizes him afar. That's my kid. He's been waiting this whole time. He knows the kid. He knows him. And he runs out to him. And I had a Jewish man tell me a Jewish father would never run for a son. The son runs for the dad. The dad would not humiliate himself and pull up his robe and embarrass himself in front of the community to run like that. If anything, the son should be crawling on his hands and knees across broken glass. So every detail in the story is intentionally offensive. And it doesn't say that he hugs his son. It doesn't say that. There's other verses that say that somebody hugs somebody. This is not a hug, I don't think. He throws his arms around his son. Why? There's still a death sentence on this kid. You throw a rock, you hit me. The son doesn't even get the speech out. You know that. Come back, there's a party. Older son comes in. He's upset, talks to the servant. Why? What's going on? I'm not going in. Why? My dad's lost his mind. Our dad he's disqualifying our family in front of the community. Like, he's honoring what he did. Like, I can't have any part in this. I think this man my dad might have even abandoned God to do this. What in the world? I know what the Torah says. My dad knows what the Torah says. What is he doing? I'm a godly man. I cannot do this. Like, I've got no room in my head for what's happening right now. I don't know how to process this, but I'm definitely not going in. Dad comes out. All that I have is yours, and you should have been the one throwing the party with me. That you should have been the one doing this for your brother. And then Jesus didn't explain it, and he walks out. The one thing all the stories have in common is this. And the lostness of the item never affected its value to the person who had lost it. Its value never came from itself. You might want to sell your house for $500, but if nobody wants to buy your house for $500, is it worth $500? Your house is worth what somebody would pay for it. It's not worth what it is. It's worth what somebody else would put on the table to make it theirs. I like what, I think it's C.S. Lewis said, you've never locked eyes with somebody that God doesn't absolutely love enough to die for. But there's lots of people we've locked eyes with that we wouldn't even get coffee with. I'm saying, I don't think we make friends like Jesus makes friends. That there's no one so far from God that they've gone too far. I genuinely do not care your theology on election. But you're not sovereign, so you don't know who is and who isn't. And for you to predetermine yourself supplants God's rule. I had a professor in college who said, he prayed at the end of every class, "Dear God, save the elect. And when they are saved, elect some more." That's the right heart. Because you don't know who is and isn't. I am assuming that all 29,000 residents in Stoughton are going to get saved. They're just waiting on a friendship with somebody at Grace Church. Why not? I think God has sovereignly ordained that those who have more friends with lost people see more lost people come to faith in Jesus. Doesn't it seem like that's true? Why can't that be you? That's what they all have in common. I want to share how I think that they're different. One is that one of the differences is the reason that they're lost. The sheep is lost out of ignorance. It didn't know any better. And there's people in your community that are far from God. They didn't know any better. They didn't go to seminary. They didn't have Christian parents. They didn't have Christian best friends at the college they went to. They've never had a legitimate shot. They don't know any better. They're ignorant. There are people who are like the sheep. They're lost at somebody's fault. It's just not their fault. They're lost out of negligence. The coin was lost out of negligence. It wasn't the coin's fault. It was the woman's fault. In places like Boston, there are people who are far from God. They grew up in church, but then they were part of the sex scandals. That all happened in Boston. So they've determined they're never going to go to another church again. They're far from God, and it is somebody's fault. There's others that were raised in churches like mine where the girl got pregnant and only the girl had to stand up and ask for the whole church's forgiveness. The boy never does for some reason in the churches I grew up in. And that girl will stay in your church while she lives with her parents. She ain't never coming back. If she didn't feel loved at all. There are other people far from God because the only Christians they've ever met were jerks. The son has no excuse. He's got a great dad. All the best opportunities. He's lost for a completely different reason. He's lost because of rebellion, willful rebellion. He's like Captain Dan in Forrest Gump who ties himself to the mast in the hurricane and says to God, "I hate you, do your worst." And we all know people like that, raised in a good and godly church, had great parents, and then just lost their stinking mind. And the only people who care why somebody's lost is us. Because the person who gets the least amount of grace is the third type. The person who had no reason to walk away and they did. They're the ones we have the least amount of empathy for. And I don't think Jesus cares at all why somebody is far from him. He only cares that they still are. That's it. That's it. So he became their friend. I think it's awesome that the people who are farthest from God felt most loved by him when he showed up. And my question is, are those who are farthest from God in your community? I'm not asking if you love them. I'm asking if they would say you love them. I think the longer you're a pastor, the less likely you are to have close friends that don't share your faith. And that makes me nervous. I think having kids is a hack for living like Jesus. Because you're at Little League games all the time. You're constantly meeting people. They're in schools, and you're around other parents who don't share your faith all the time. When your kids get out of high school, I'm an empty nester now. And so it just takes more effort and intentionality to maintain close friends, which is why I think it's part of my walk with Christ to play old man basketball on Thursday nights at the Y. It's a 35 and older league, right? It's to find hobbies that none of my Christian friends have because it puts me in contact with people who are far from God. It's the reason why I want our pastors to have a side hustle in the community, not because I don't pay them a livable wage, but pastors who don't have friends who are far from God, you end up becoming weird. You don't know how to have normal conversations. You force waitresses to pray with you. I'm a Christian and I hate that. You're doing that for you. What did she do that gave you the impression she needed you to pray for her? Like you might be doing to her what the woman did with the coin. I'm just saying I don't know you guys. I'm not trying to be. I just want us to reevaluate how we spend our time and who we spend our time with. That's all I'm saying. I think you need people who are far from God that hang out in your backyard. I think you need to go to some parties that would have made a professor uncomfortable to see you at, or your parents ground you. I think we need to be called some names by other followers of Jesus who don't understand the mission of Jesus. And I have 4 minutes left. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to share what I think could be helpful tips for developing a more robust and diverse circle of influence. By diverse, I mean spiritually diverse. If that would be okay with you, that's what I would like to do. I make a few assumptions. The first assumption I make is this, that the entire point of being a follower of Jesus is helping other people become followers of Jesus. Don't take that to the extreme. But I'm quoting Jesus when I say that. Because Jesus said, if you follow me, I will make you a what? The end result of you following Jesus is your passion for those who do not follow Jesus. That is the metric of your spiritual maturity. The closer you are to God, the more you prioritize those who are farthest from God. Jesus said this. If you follow me, this is what it will lead to. If it's not leading to that, you are studying the faith only, you don't practice it. And we end up on the wrong team. I'm not saying that we lose our salvation. I don't want God to sit down the Spirit in my heart, like, bro, like you have lost your way. You thought it was about the 99, dude. You got to get the whole 90, all the 99s. Every one of them, no an extra one. Second, I spent too much time on that. Oh, yeah. First, the entire point of being a follower of Jesus is helping other people become followers of Jesus. Jesus said that. 2, the closer we get to Jesus, the more we care about those who are far from him. And 3, what Christians think of me spending time with people far from God is irrelevant. And there's 3 things that I think all of us need. And in the same way that I knew what Tony was saying yesterday was from God, because it all started with the prefix of re. All of these start with the letter P. That's how you know it's from God. Proximity. You need access to people who are far from God. If you spend all of your time in the office, you just don't have access. If you're a professor or a student in this college, you just don't have access. Garrett, when he was in this college, both of my boys graduated from Boys. My oldest son was encouraged while he was here to volunteer in an organization that taught Muslim immigrants how to drive so that the men could get driver's license so that they could get a job. I love that. That here at this school, my son was encouraged to use his car, his gas money, while he was a student, not making any money because he didn't work enough hours, but that's another conversation for another day. But the fact that he was spending his time and his money gaining, and I asked him why he wanted to do that. And he said, because I want to know how to share Jesus with Muslims. That's the heart of Jesus. He just spends time with them. They always ask, why are you doing this? He says, because I'm a Christian and I feel like we should be for everyone. Stuff like that. I love that. You just, okay, go to a cigar lounge, go to an old man basketball league, play pickleball, if you got no talent. But, sorry, are you pro? Okay. Oh, he's amening me. That's good. Yeah, anyway, find something, man. Find something. Proximity, you need access. I think there's a tension that we feel as Christians between the familiar. So here's the reason why we don't want this. There's a tension in our heart between the familiarity of Christian fellowship and the discomfort of being a minority among a group of people who have a completely different set of values. It's unsettling. It's very uncomfortable. When you're hanging out with a group of guys and you're the only sober guy here now, right? Or whatever, it's just uncomfortable. They don't have the same ethos because they don't have the Spirit of God in them. I don't say that in a condescending way. I'm just saying like they don't have what you have, but they need what you have. But if they never feel loved by you, they'll never want what you have. Yeah, so it's just uncomfortable. 2 is you need to be careful of your posture. All of us are leaders. We step into environments and we fix things. I got invited to be on the board of directors for the Stoyak, the Stoughton Youth Athletic Club. It's the oldest little league board in town, and once you're on the board, it's a lifetime position. I had an atheistic Jewish friend of mine whose dad was the longest tenured person on the board. He was also on the board, and he goes, how the blank did this happen? And I wanted to say hand to God, but I didn't want to freak him out, so I was like, oh no. But when I got in, they're still keeping financial records with a notebook and a pencil. They don't keep track of emails from year to year. There's no database, there's no marketing plan. Like I worked in business for a couple of years, and I've started a couple of things on the side. So I was like if people don't, you guys are complaining about dwindling numbers, but we don't even put a post on the Facebook page for our town. Like I show up and I start fixing everything. Now I'm seen as a threat. And it went awkward. And the Holy Spirit in my heart was like, dude, you are not here to make baseball more efficient. You're here so that the lost can become found. Be their friend. So I started helping George, who's the one that keeps everything on paper with a pencil. Just said, what do you need me to do? And he had me doing dumb menial stuff. And that's, if Jesus can wash the disciples' feet, I can make sure that there's a scorebook on the table for every 5 and 6-year-old basketball game on Saturdays. You know what I'm saying? It's our posture. We're here to serve. We want to lead. You have to be invited into leadership. So when you start hanging out with people who are far from God, especially if it's on their turf, back off. 3 is patterns of speech. I think we've all learned Christian shorthand, which is terribly confusing. I had a friend come preach at Grace Church, and he kept saying gospel, 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 gospel. Our bass player used to be in a band that would open up from some really big bands when they would come to Boston, and he'd been saved and baptized at Grace Church. I said, when he says gospel, what is that? What do you think he means when he says that? He goes, he's just saying the Bible, the Bible, the Bible, the Bible, right? I'm like, it's in the Bible, and okay. And I was like, bro, define the terms you use. Like, assume lost people show up and lost people start showing up. Like, if you're talking, if the way you, I don't know, talk about 12th grade theology and 5th grade English. So I'm in Boston. We do have some PhDs, professors from MIT. Our executive pastor has a degree from MIT and Suffolk Law School. We have a geologist. We have a cancer research person who has their own research lab. And one of the things that they love the most is they say, this is the first time I've ever understood what the preacher, they're smarter than us in everything but theology. And I think being a youth pastor is a hack. Because if you know how to talk to a 14-year-old about the gospel, you'll be able to communicate the gospel to a 40-year-old. But it doesn't go the other way around. So just make it easy, man. Just like, don't be weird. That's the whole point of today. Jesus said, go forth and don't be weird. But yeah, here's what I want you to do. We're going to close in prayer. And my time is actually, this is the first time I've ever ended on time. Ever. And what I want you to do is, if you have some unsaved close friends, pray for them to come to faith. And can I share one last thing? You're like, you're going to do it anyway. Are you really asking? For context, our neighbors in front of us, saved and baptized at Grace. Behind us, saved and baptized at Grace. I'm giving it to you in order. Across the street, saved and baptized at Grace. Behind us, saved and baptized at Grace. Caddy corner behind us, saved and baptized at Grace. Across the street, 3 doors down, saved and baptized at Grace. Across the street, next door, saved and baptized at Grace. I told my wife, when this atheistic Jewish couple comes to faith in Jesus, and when the Buddhist Vietnamese family come to faith in Jesus, then we can move to a new street and start all over. She goes, no, because then we've made our church, our street finally comfortable, is what she said. But I wasn't any of their pastor. I was their friend. I organized wiffle ball games on 4th of July in the parking lot of the Methodist Church 2 doors down that I would invite them to. We organized, because a lot of us had sons graduating the same year, we actually went to the town, had the street shut down, and threw a huge block party that Grace Church donated all of our inflatables for and stuff like that. I started out, I just became a friend, man. And everybody talks about God. Everybody. Atheists are obsessed with him. But nobody wants to talk about God to somebody they're not comfortable with. They were comfortable with Jesus. They need to be comfortable with us. Just be their friend. They will start the conversation. Your job isn't to say them, that's God's job. Our job is to keep the conversation going. When they change the subject, I let the subject change. Because I'm not trying to score a touchdown on every play. We don't need a Hail Mary every time the ball's hiked. Just move the chains. Just keep the chains moving. Let's pray. God, I love you with all of my heart. And I'm thankful for every Christian that's slowed down their pace to match mine, to help me follow you more faithfully. God, help us to be more comfortable in spiritually unsafe places, because no weapon formed against us can prosper. There's an appointed day for each one of us to die, and we are bulletproof until that day. Fearless. Let us love indiscriminately. Let us make friends with everyone. Let those who are farthest from you feel most loved by us. Let those far from you but close to us come to faith in your Son, Jesus, and allow us to be a part of their story like others have been a part of ours. We ask this in Jesus' name, and we all say together, amen.